I'm going to call up our final speaker, Lurie. Glenn, why don't you come up and just take a seat? And I will say this, we have, I don't think we've ever had this many people late in the day. We were fortunate when I found out that Glenn Lurie could be here, and so we added a closing keynote, and I'm very appreciative of the fact that you're here to do that. One of the things that we've had a lot of, you just witnessed some of it, we've had a lot of law talk today, if I can call it that, because the theme of this conference was the FCC and the rule of law. But I know you're, at least principally, if not exclusively, a business person. So I think that's the appropriate way to bring us back really to what sometimes we call the real world here. So what I'm going to do, and I've done this all day, so please don't feel slighted. We've got this nice brochure. It's even got your photograph in here. So I'm just going to give your title and refer people to the brochure. Glenn was appointed President and CEO, AT&T Mobility and Consumer Operations in February 2016. So this is a new job for you and new title. And I just thought one thing, I've sometimes picked out one thing from these bios, and one thing that Glenn says is that as he basically just moved up through the ranks and had all this terrific and varied business experience. But it says after he was at McCall Cellular, it says over the next 2 decades, he helped usher in the smartphone era and took a leading role in bringing wireless connectivity to tablets, cars, and gadgets. I love that use of sort of gadgets there, because there's certainly a lot of those. So with that, I want to welcome Glenn, and thanks again for being here.
Good afternoon. It's kind of embarrassing because the picture you have there, I'm wearing the same tie. And I promise that I do have more than one tie. I really do. I didn't know that. So no, thanks, Randy. I appreciate it. I know you guys have had a long day. Let me do this. First of all, it's great to be in D.C. It's nice to be here talking some closing remarks. And if you've been doing legal talk all day, I promise you I will not go there. I've got tremendously phenomenal lawyers, but I let them do that. Let me talk a little about the business. The debates, I imagine you had a couple today. I imagine you had a couple discussions. I know as folks on the FCC, I probably won't go there either. I will take a few questions afterwards. But what I really want to talk about is the industry and some trends that we're seeing. And I've been asked to be uplifting at the end of the day, and I will do my best to do that. We see really 4 really important trends that are taking place in the industry. And I want to think about today, but also where we're headed. One of those trends is software. And when I say software, someone's going to go, what about apps? Put them together. Think about that as one trend. Mobility, which of course is what the business we're in, and a really critical element to where we're headed. It's going to be in everything that we do. IoT, the term is Internet of Things. I will talk, we've been in this from the beginning. We are a leader in this, but absolutely critical, and video. So if you put those together and you think about those, you think about software, mobility, IoT, and video, we see these 4 things as being a key driver to where our business is going. So let me dig into these real quick. Let me start with software. Most of you have probably heard of a gentleman named Mark Andreessen. He is very famous in Silicon Valley, and he came out a few years ago and said that software is eating the world. And the point he was making around software is that software was becoming more important than hardware. And that seems pretty simple today when you think about it, but the reality is software is allowing us to do a whole bunch of things very differently. One, it's allowing us to be faster in every single way in our business. It's allowing us to be better. And when I say better, I'll get into that in a minute, but it's allowing us to actually do things in a faster, better, and cheaper way. It also is about flexibility and scalability. When you think about what's happened in our business, a great example is we have traffic that's up 1,000% plus over the last 7 years. Think about that for a second. So our traffic on our network's up 1,000%. Anybody have 1,000% more traffic on the way to work? How do you feel about that? Right? So that is part of what we have to do as we go to virtualize our networks. And the key to this is software. And when you think about virtualizing our networks, you're talking about taking the hardware and really relegating it to a second discussion, less expensive, not have to be very specific, to where software drives everything that we do. It also is our driver to the cloud. So again, I think you get it. And now if you think about, real quick, a couple of examples. Anybody taken Uber lately? I imagine most of your hands will go up, or Airbnb. These are examples of where software and mobility have completely disrupted and changed industries. And I can go on, and you guys probably could help me when you think about that disruption. Let me move quickly, though, to mobility. Obviously, we talk about mobility. I've been in the wireless business 26 years. I was in it from very early days. And when you think about mobility and software together, then we start talking about what really enables the cloud. And as you think about the latencies and speeds we have today, we can talk about 5G. Everybody wants to, even though it's 4 years out. You get into 10 times faster, lower latencies, and the cloud becomes real time. And that software and mobility come together, make really the world accessible to that device. And I'd argue it's accessible today. I'd argue you can do things today you never imagined 6, 7, or 8 years ago. But the speed of change is increasing. Another great quote from Benedict Evans, who actually works for Marc Andreessen, he came out a few years after Marc and said, mobile is eating the world. So I would challenge you to put those two things together. Software and mobility is really changing everything in our lives and every aspect of what we do. If you go back, and many of you in this room will remember, in mid-07, really the first true smartphone was born. That was the iPhone. I was fortunate to be involved in that from the beginning. Really, it was mid-08 that you actually had a 3G iPhone and you had an app store. And that opened everybody's eyes in the industry to what's possible. I'd ask people in this room, how many of you thought you'd be banking from a phone 6, 7, 8 years ago? Right? One guy. I like it. Very good. You and I should chat. I'm going to ask you what's happening 8 years from now. But the key element is, if you think about that for a second. I mean, I got asked recently, if I would have asked anybody in the room in 2006 what you wanted your smartphone to do, you wouldn't have had an answer. And now you look at what's happened so rapidly, just really in 7 or 8 years. Applications and platforms are changing everything. And then this is going to move me to my third key trend, which is really IoT. And IoT is a new term. It used to be connected devices, then it was emerging devices, then it was M2M. And what it really means is everything in your life is going to be connected. Everything. And now people don't like that. We hear from consumers that makes them nervous. It's our job to make that simple. We spotted this trend very early. What we spotted was a thing called the Amazon Kindle. Anybody have one? Right? Everybody, and believe it or not, it wasn't with AT&T when it started. It is now, but it wasn't with AT&T back then. And our chairman started asking questions, and we actually went out and talked to customers. What do you love about the Kindle? Said it just works. I go, do you realize how the book gets there? Nope. We had people say, nope, it's magic, don't care. What they cared about is that it worked and it was simple. And at that point, we saw ahead that really everything in our lives will be connected. Everything from your home, your car, your Starbucks, your office, a smartphone with you in between. And that's what's really changing people's lives. Today, we lead the industry in this. We got into it early. We invested early. We're continuing to go there. But really, just so you think about the future, we're just scratching the surface. The projections right now are between 25 and 50 billion connected things by 2020. It's not very far off. $1 trillion of revenue inside of this business, and that's where we're heading. The last trend is video. And this one is an incredible trend when you think about where it's headed. We have had a massive explosion in video. I see some folks in this room that I imagine if I asked them what their TV was, this is your TV, I'm looking over there. My son, by the way, is 22 and used 22 gigs last month by himself. And I asked him, could he please find a Wi-Fi hotspot? He said, no, your LTE network's faster, which I pay for that, by the way. So, but this is his TV. And this is the future of where we're going. 60% of the traffic on our networks today are video already. Many of you may have heard we made a small acquisition in DirecTV, about $63 billion recently. And that's the concept of bringing video together with mobility. And really that concept is simple. It's about, I want my content, my video, anytime, any place, anywhere, on any device. And that's what we're going to deliver. But that's what consumers are expecting. In the business world, video is turned into every call you're looking at somebody. The equipment prices have come down, the bandwidth is there, and it's obviously a lot more personal, reduces travel, et cetera, and that's where that world is going. So in closing, these 4 trends are indicative. If you just kind of crunch them all together, you start to see where this industry is going. It's about software. It's about having that flexibility. It's about virtualizing everything into the cloud. And when you have that kind of speed in our networks, you have the kind of low latency we have, it becomes real time and allows you to do those things. It's about everything in your lives being connected. It's about you, by the way, having the control of how that connectivity works for you. The key to this, for us to get the volume, the velocity, whatever term you want to use, is personalization for your life. Whether that be in your home, in your car, right, anywhere in between, and et cetera, in the sense of mobilizing your world. The one thing I'll leave you with is that we are leading this. The US is in the lead. We are driving what is happening here, whether it's high-speed networks, whether it's IoT, whether it's cloud. The key is we have to continue to lead this. And a lot of the discussions you had today and where we need light touch and et cetera, are going to be core to us continuing to invest in this space as we are today. And actually, hopefully, you're going to be looking to us to invest even more tomorrow to drive this type of economy that will drive and really change people's lives. I would say this is really not a technical shift, a technology shift. It's a complete societal shift as we continue to move forward. So with that, I only had a few minutes today. I hope that helps people think about, I hope that was uplifting. Good, okay, good. I'm glad I get a little chuckle, that makes me feel better. But really importantly, we are just scratching the surface of where this is going. And that's the exciting part. And you look at where we are today, and somebody's going to want to talk about 5G. I'm glad to, and we do some Q&A. It's just all upside as we go forward, as we think about where the future is. So thank you very much, and glad to take a few questions.
Well, Glenn has graciously agreed to take a couple questions, and again, I'll say I appreciate everyone being here. This is probably the longest conference we've had, and I'm proud of it. It's been good, but I'll tell you why your remarks were so really good and important at the end, really, because you weren't here earlier. But so much of the discussion earlier was rightly focused on policy, getting the policy right. And I mentioned we did a lot of talk about the rule of law. Bob Quinn did some of that, and there were some great discussions. But during the course of that, there really wasn't much time to really bring it down to the business level and why it matters and what's going on. And you really you did that, and so that's a great way to really close. Okay, with that now, we're just going to take a couple questions. I'm going to identify 3 people at most, and Howard Buskirk here first, and then the gentleman right behind him, and then maybe with Brooks, and that's going to be it. But you need, I know Howard does this anyway. He's a real reporter. Just ask a question now, and don't make a statement.
I have no statement. My question is about the speech that was already alluded to earlier in the week by Chairman Wheeler. We've seen this movie before speech. One of the things that he said in that was that there's been no harmful effect from the net neutrality order, and he pointed to your CapEx expenditures. And I think he said that you can draw the same lesson from the privacy rules, that there's not going to be any harmful business effects. And you're on the business side, and I'm just wondering from your perspective, especially on the privacy, what's the outlook?
Thought there were no lawyers. Hey, Bob Quinn? No, I'm kidding. I think a couple of things. First of all, I think as we look at our spending, you need to look deeper into the exact spending. There's some statements that have been made. One of the things we've done is invested in a whole bunch of other things. We're not just a wireless carrier anymore, right? We've invested in DTV. We've announced $7 billion of investment in Mexico as well. So I think when you see the numbers come out, I think investment has dropped a bit for us, specifically us. But the bottom line is the key for us to continue to have the innovation, for us to continue to invest in networks, is that we have to have an opportunity, obviously, to make a fair margin, grow our business, and continue to invest. And so that's going to be the core of what we want to go do going forward. Randall Stevenson, our CEO, has said numerous times, we've been the largest investor of any company in America, not just Telecom, for many, many years now. And he's continued to invest, and we've continued to go on out and be aggressive. And we will continue to do that if we have the opportunity with that investment.
Do you have a question?
Yes, thank you. Hey, Glenn, Alex Byers with Politico. I wanted to ask about sponsored data. You guys have had a sponsored data program for a couple of years now. It doesn't seem to be super active. As far as I know, there aren't a ton of providers. But we have seen some of your competitors, Verizon, T-Mo, getting more active in the space. Should we expect AT&T to accelerate its sponsored data activities? I mean, one thing that comes to mind is you mentioned DTV. There's the DTV mobile service coming. I was wondering if maybe we'll expect to see if I'm an AT&T subscriber and I subscribe to DTV mobile, will that content be exempted from a monthly bill?
I think what you should, first of all, we were the first ones in this and talking about it, as you recall. We viewed it as another way for customers to get to utilize our network, another way for customers to monetize, pay, whatever term you'd like to use. Obviously, there's some rulemaking out there that we have to wait and see kind of where that goes. We've been working very closely with a number of players, and I think it's a tremendous opportunity for consumers. That's really the focus here, right, is the customer and what it delivers the customer, but nothing more really to give as far as how we're going to do going forward.
Okay, we'll have the last question here from Brooks Harlow.
Thank you, Randy. Brooks Harlow, Lucas Nace, Gutierrez, and Sachs. Maybe this is an engineer's question and a few
I'm an engineer too, didn't you know that?
Excellent. So my question is, where do you see the spectrum coming for 5G? And I don't mean from the FCC. I mean like 28, 38, or some other gigahertz. And secondly, if it's coming from a spectrum that's typically line of sight and blocked by trees and things like that, how do you see the network evolving to support that new area of spectrum?
Well, it's a great question. And when you think, look, whenever we answer questions about 5G, it's important to know we don't have the standard done yet. I think you guys all know 3GPP will, hopefully we'll see that in 2018. I think the key for us right now is the testing that we're going to be doing in Austin to really understand what that looks like. When you start getting up in 28 gigahertz in that area, you're talking really about utilizing that millimeter wave, small cell opportunities. And I think it's actually very exciting. When you think about what we can do and what we believe 5G will ultimately have and be. The key to 5G for us is obviously the faster speeds and lower latencies and all those wonderful things. But remember, as I talked about, virtualizing our network today, we are leading the industry in that. That's going to play a big role as we look at how we then engineer that network going into 5G. And the other play that I think is exciting is around IoT. We need a layer in 5G. It's what we're working on. It's what we believe will be in there that will allow us to have low power, so that now we can put a sensor on a traffic light or on a water main that has 10-year battery life, so that the actual model does work and those types of things. So you will see us working very closely with every aspect of spectrum to make sure that we can build that into the standard, so it will be a part of what we do and how we utilize it.
Well, again, Glenn, that's terrific, because it brings home at the end of the day why sound policy is important, why rule of law norms are important, because all of these things you talk about have to take place, within a regulatory regime or most of it. And so it's important, and we appreciate that. In fact, it was so good that I have to tell you, I've got 2 of those coasters left. Normally, most speakers here have only gotten 1, but someone didn't take it. And I'm going to ask you whether, I hope there's no rule against it, but I'd like for you to take those last 2 Free State Foundation coasters with you. And again, I appreciate your making time to come by today. Thanks a lot.
Thank you guys very much.
Thank you so much. That was perfect. Okay, and that brings us to the end of the day, concludes the conference. I'll say what I said at the very beginning. I always appreciate all of you turning out. I appreciate your interest in the Free State Foundation's work and our events, and I appreciate your friendship. So thanks for being here.